Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss a single story like this. Today, we're talking about something that might just change the way you think about collecting coins, and maybe even your life savings. Now, I want you to imagine holding in your hand something that looks ordinary. Something you've probably seen before, maybe even in your pocket or in a drawer somewhere at home. It's small, it's copper-colored, and to most people, it seems completely worthless. But let me tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. This is a coin from South Africa, dated 1971. It's a 1-cent piece. Simple, unassuming, easy to overlook. But what makes this coin extraordinary is the story behind it. Back in 1971, South Africa was producing coins for everyday use. Coins that would pass through the hands of workers, shopkeepers, and families. Millions were minted, yet somehow, a single coin from that year has become one of the most sought-after collectibles in the world. And the reason isn't obvious at first glance. You see, when collectors look at coins, they're not just seeing metal. They're seeing history. They're seeing rarity. They're seeing a connection to a time that will never come back. And in the case of this 1971 1-cent coin, it's a perfect storm of all three. Let me take you back. The year was 1971. The world was changing. In South Africa, coins were more than currency. They were symbols of an era. The design on the coin itself was simple, but it reflected an entire nation's pride. What makes this coin extraordinary, however, is that only a handful of them were produced with a tiny, almost invisible flaw. A flaw that, at the time, no one noticed. But today makes this coin one of the rarest in existence. Collectors love rarity. They chase it. They study it. And once word spreads that something is extremely rare, the value can skyrocket in ways that are almost unimaginable. That's exactly what happened with this coin. Imagine sitting in your living room, dusting off an old coin collection that's been in a box for decades. You pick up a coin without thinking, and suddenly, everything changes. That's the thrill of numismatics, the study and collection of coins. A coin that looks like a penny to most people can be worth more than a small house if it's rare enough. And that brings us to the 1971 South African 1-cent coin. Most of these coins were ordinary, but a few of them were struck in such a way that they became anomalies. Flawless, beautiful, and virtually one of a kind. A collector spotting one of these would know immediately, this isn't just a coin. This is a treasure. Think about it. For years, these coins were tucked away in drawers, wallets, and coin jars. No one paid them any attention. Then collectors started to notice that some coins had slight differences in design, tiny variations that shouldn't exist. And once those differences were documented, demand exploded. The coin transformed from everyday currency into a prize worth millions. That it's not just the rarity that drives the value. It's the story. Every scratch, every imperfection, every mark on the coin tells a piece of history. It's a window into a world that's gone forever. And for men who grew up in that era, there's a certain nostalgia too, an emotional connection that can't be replicated. Here's something most people don't realize. Coin collecting is not just a hobby. It's a serious investment. And some of the coins we're talking about today are literally life-changing if you own the right one. I'm talking about coins that have sold for millions in private auctions. Coins that, in the right hands, have turned decades of careful collecting into financial windfalls. This is where the 1971 South African 1-cent coin comes in. Most people would glance at it and toss it back into the drawer. But those who know, those who understand the history and the rarity, see something else entirely. They see a golden opportunity. Not just an opportunity to make money, but an opportunity to own a piece of history, a tangible link to the past that very few people will ever hold. And here's the kicker. Only a handful of these coins exist today in pristine condition. Fewer than a dozen are known to collectors worldwide. And that scarcity has driven the value beyond imagination. If you're sitting there thinking, it's just a coin, consider this. Some of the most valuable coins ever sold were pennies. Tiny, unassuming, almost invisible in a pile of change. Yet collectors, historians, and investors recognize them for what they are: irreplaceable artifacts with stories that cannot be replicated. Now, imagine holding a coin in your hand that has the power to make you the envy of every collector in the world. A coin that carries the weight of history, the thrill of rarity, and the potential for a fortune beyond most people's wildest dreams. That's exactly what this 1971 South African 1 cent coin represents, that it's more than copper. It's more than a date on a coin. It's a symbol of discovery, of patience, of the thrill of seeing something ordinary turn into the extraordinary. And for those of us who appreciate history, who value the stories that objects can tell, it's priceless. That I won't keep you waiting any longer. The 1971 South African 1 cent coin, in perfect, pristine condition, has reached a value that is almost unimaginable. People have paid handsomely for the privilege of owning one, and in the right market, it can command an astonishing $56 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $56 million for a single penny. A coin that most people would overlook without a second thought. That is the true magic of collecting, the thrill of discovery, and the incredible power of rarity. So, next time you come across an old coin, don't just toss it aside. Look closely. Study it. You might be holding a piece of history worth far more than you ever imagined. And for those of you who want more stories like this, more hidden treasures and rare finds, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Because history, wealth, and adventure are just a coin toss away. Subscribe now and stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not just about a coin. It is about history, power, legacy, and a story that many people still underestimate. Today, I want you to imagine holding something so small that it almost feels unimportant. Something you might have ignored, spent, or lost decades ago. A tiny half-cent coin from South Africa, dated 1971. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Light, simple, modest. But behind this coin is a story that speaks directly to men who understand time, patience, and the value of things that last. That this coin was born in a period of change. South Africa in 1971 was standing between old systems and a future that no one could fully predict. The half-cent was already becoming unnecessary in daily life. Inflation was rising, purchasing power was changing, and the world was moving fast. This coin represented the final breath of a fading monetary era. It was one of the last times a half-cent made sense in a modern economy. That the metal itself tells a story. Copper, solid and honest. The kind of material that does not pretend to be more than it is. Over the years, copper darkens, matures, develops character. Just like a man who has lived through decades of work, responsibility, and experience. This coin was never meant to impress. It was meant to function. And yet, that is exactly why it matters. On one side, the national emblem stands firm, symbolizing authority, order, and the structure of a nation. On the other side, the value is small, almost humble, half a cent. But history teaches us something important. The smallest denominations often disappear first, and when they do, they leave behind scarcity. Scarcity creates attention. Attention creates desire. Most people did not save this coin. They used it, forgot it, or threw it into jars and drawers. Many were melted, damaged, or lost forever. The few that survived in pristine condition became silent witnesses to a forgotten chapter of economic history. This is where seasoned collectors begin to pay attention. For men who understand collecting, this coin is not about size or face value. It is about timing. It is about survival. It is about being one of the last physical reminders of a system that no longer exists. The half-cent was discontinued because the world decided it was no longer needed. But that decision is exactly what turned it into something special. There is also a psychological pull. Older collectors remember using coins like this. They remember a time when money felt different in the hand, when coins had weight, sound, and meaning. This coin connects memory to metal. It brings back a sense of control and stability that many feel is missing today. Over the years, rumors started circulating in elite collecting circles. Stories of rare strikes, exceptional preservation, special mint conditions, coins that should not have survived, but did, coins that slipped through history untouched. And as with all powerful collectibles, mystery fuels value. Some say that a very small number of 1,971 half-cent coins exist in extraordinary condition, protected from circulation, oxidation, and damage. These are the coins that auction whispers are made of. The ones never publicly displayed. The ones that change hands quietly. Collectors who understand long-term value do not rush. They wait. They study. They recognize patterns others ignore. They know that history rewards patience. This coin is a lesson in that philosophy. It teaches that what the world dismisses today may become priceless tomorrow. Think about how many times wealth has been overlooked because it did not look impressive at first. Think about how many opportunities were missed because they appeared too small. This coin challenges that mindset. It proves that power does not always announce itself loudly. There is also pride involved. Ownership of such a coin is not about showing off. It is about knowing. Knowing you hold something that represents an ending and a beginning at the same time. Knowing you possess a piece of monetary evolution. Men over 55 understand this deeply. You have seen cycles. You have watched systems rise and fall. You know that real value is not always visible to the crowd. It reveals itself slowly, over time. This is why the South African 1971 half-cent coin continues to fascinate serious collectors. Not because of what it could buy, but because of what it represents. A forgotten unit of value that outlived its purpose and transformed into something far greater. Now here is where the story reaches its peak. Among collectors, there is a legendary valuation associated with an exceptionally rare and perfectly preserved example of this coin. A figure that shocks those who only see metal. A number that represents rarity, history, and demand combined. That rumored valuation stands at $13 million. Not because it is a half cent, but because it is one of a kind in survival, condition, and historical importance. So before you dismiss the smallest things in your life, remember this story. Sometimes the quietest pieces carry the loudest legacy. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, because stories like this are disappearing fast, and once this knowledge is gone, it may never return. Today I'm holding a coin that most people would walk past without a second glance. It doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't sparkle like gold bullion or carry a dramatic legend printed on the surface. Yet this small, solid piece of metal carries a story of power, survival, history, and hidden wealth. This is the South Africa 2005 or 55 Rand coin, and what you are about to hear may change the way you look at coins forever. For many men who grew up handling real money, coins were more than pocket change. They were symbols of effort. You worked, you earned, you saved. This coin comes from a time when South Africa stood at a crossroads, balancing its deep past with a future still being written. The year 2005 was not random. It was a period when the country was redefining its identity, its economy, and its place in the world. Coins minted during such moments often carry significance far beyond their face value. The 5 Rand denomination itself tells a story. It was created for strength and daily use, not decoration. The size, weight, and feel of the coin were designed to last. When you hold it in your hand, you feel that solidity immediately. This is not a fragile token. It is firm, balanced, and confident. Much like the generation that respects it most. On the surface, the design speaks quietly but clearly. South African coinage has always respected national pride, wildlife, and leadership. The details are not accidental. Every line, every symbol, every curve was approved, tested, and finalized by skilled designers and officials who understood that coins are messages passed through time. Long after documents fade and voices fall silent, coins remain. What makes the 2005 R5 especially interesting is not just how it looks, but when it was made. This coin comes from a limited production window compared to earlier mass circulation years. Subtle changes in minting techniques, metal composition, and distribution makes certain examples far rarer than people realize. Most were spent, lost, or worn down. Very few survived in pristine condition. Men who understand value know that rarity is not always loud. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. This coin circulated in markets, pockets, and tills, quietly living an ordinary life. But a small number escaped that fate. Those untouched pieces became something else entirely. They became time capsules. Collectors with experience know that coins gain power from three things: condition, story, and demand. This coin has all three. The condition, when preserved correctly, reveals sharp edges, clean fields, and original luster that cannot be recreated. The story connects it to a nation's economic journey. And the demand has grown steadily as serious collectors and investors look beyond gold bars and paper assets. There is also psychology at play. Older collectors, especially men who value legacy, are drawn to objects that outlive trends. This coin does not depend on fashion or hype. It represents endurance. It represents a system that worked, a currency that was trusted, and a time when money felt real in your hand. What many people don't understand is how coins like this move from circulation to legend. It starts quietly. A few collectors notice anomalies. A certain batch, a certain finish, a certain year. Then auction rooms begin to whisper. Private collectors start competing. Coins disappear into vaults, never to be seen again. Scarcity tightens. Prices climb. This is not about quick profit. This is about ownership, about holding something that very few people on earth can ever possess. Men who have built businesses, families, and reputations understand this instinctively. True value is rarely obvious at the beginning. The South Africa 2005 or 55 Rand coin stands at that intersection between everyday object and extraordinary artifact. It reminds us that history does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as something ordinary, waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. As years pass, fewer examples remain. Metal corrodes. Coins are damaged. Collections are broken apart. But the finest surviving pieces grow stronger in value and meaning. They become benchmarks. They become reference points. They become legends. This is why serious collectors pay attention to coins like this. Not because everyone is talking about them, but because not everyone understands them. Knowledge separates the observer from the owner. If you are watching this and thinking about the coins you've handled, saved, or dismissed over the years, remember this story. Remember that value often hides behind familiarity. The greatest treasures are not always discovered. Sometimes they are simply recognized. And now, as promised, here is the figure that has turned this coin from curiosity into global conversation. The valuation that has stunned collectors and investors alike, placing the South Africa 2005 or 55 Rand coin at an estimated worth of $22 million. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, because stories like this are made for those who appreciate history, value, and the quiet power of rare objects that most people overlook. Imagine holding a coin so small and ordinary that it could disappear between your fingers, yet powerful enough to spark debates, dreams, and legends across generations. Today's story is about a simple-looking 2-cent coin from South Africa, dated 1969. At first glance, it feels familiar. Copper color, modest size, no glitter, no luxury. But this coin is not about shine. It is about time, rarity, and the hidden strength of survival. For many men who grew up counting coins in their pockets, coins were not collectibles. They were tools. You bought bread, took the bus, paid for a newspaper. The 2-cent coin was part of daily life. It passed through thousands of hands, clinked on wooden counters, and rested in dusty jars at home. Most were spent without a second thought. And that is exactly why this story matters. The year 1969 was not just another year. It was a turning point in many parts of the world. Economies were shifting, currencies were being adjusted, and nations were redefining themselves. In South Africa, coin production during this era reflected both practicality and transition. The 2 cents coin of 1969 was minted for everyday use, never intended to become special. That is what makes it powerful that this coin represents a time when money had weight, not just financial weight, but emotional weight. You could feel it in your palm. It made a sound when dropped on a table. It carried the marks of the machines that created it and the hands that used it. Over the years, most of these coins vanished. They were melted, lost, damaged, or forgotten, but a few survived in remarkable condition. Some were stored away by men who believed in keeping things, not throwing them out. Men who understood that history lives in small objects. Men who knew that value does not always announce itself loudly. What makes the 1969 South Africa 2 cents coin so fascinating is not just its age. It is the mystery surrounding certain examples. Slight differences in strike, metal flow, and preservation have turned a basic coin into a subject of intense interest. Among collectors, stories circulate quietly. Stories of coins found in old drawers, passed down from fathers to sons, discovered when houses were cleaned or estates were settled. This is where the emotional pull begins. Because this coin is not only about money, it is about memory. It reminds many men of a time when they worked hard, saved carefully, and respected every cent. It speaks to discipline, patience, and long-term thinking, qualities that do not fade with age. There is something deeply satisfying about knowing that something small, ignored by millions, could hold extraordinary importance. It challenges the idea that value must be loud or obvious. Instead, it rewards those who pay attention, who preserve, who wait. As interest in historical coins grows, especially among mature collectors, the 1969 2 cents coin has taken on a new identity. It is no longer pocket change. It is a symbol, a reminder that history does not always sit in museums. Sometimes it sits in your home, quietly, waiting. Men over 50 understand this better than anyone. You have seen trends come and go. You know that real worth takes time to be recognized. Coins like this one reflect that truth. They are patient. They do not demand attention. They simply exist, holding their story within metal. Imagine the conversations this coin has sparked. Late nights at tables, magnifying glasses in hand, quiet voices discussing details, condition, and possibility. Imagine the pride of discovering something overlooked by the world. That moment is not about profit. It is about validation. Even those who never plan to sell feel the pull of such a coin. It becomes part of identity, a reminder that wisdom grows with age, and that careful observation can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. As this story circulates, the legend grows stronger. Not because of marketing, not because of hype, but because of belief. Belief in rarity, belief in preservation, belief that history rewards those who respect it. And now we reach the part that captures attention and fuels imagination. Among collectors and storytellers, one figure is often whispered, not shouted, because numbers like this demand silence and respect. A valuation spoken of as a possibility, a legend, a symbol of what rarity combined with history can represent. At the end of this journey, the 1969 South Africa 2 cents coin is no longer small. It stands tall as a reminder that even the humblest object can rise beyond expectation, carrying with it a story, a generation, and a dream valued at $26 million. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear is a story that every collector, every history lover, and every man who respects the weight of time and legacy will want to follow to the very end. Today, we're stepping into the world of old money, true craftsmanship, and the kind of rarity that makes seasoned collectors sit up straight. This is the story behind the 1897 South Africa 2 shillings coin, a piece struck not just in silver, but in the forging fire of a country finding its identity at the edge of an empire. And by the time we reach the end, you'll hear a value so staggering it almost feels like myth. Stay with me. The year was 1897. South Africa was in the midst of change, conflict, and ambition. Gold had been discovered in the interior. Wealth was rising and collapsing in waves. and the world's eyes were shifting toward this southern land. But deep inside all that turbulence, the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, or the South African Republic, struck coins that carried more than monetary worth. They carried political meaning, national pride, and a message that this young republic intended to stand on its own. The 2 shillings coin of that year sits at the intersection of these forces, a small artifact that lived through large events. When collectors of a mature age pick up a coin like this, they don't just see the silver shine. They see the marks of history pressed into its detail. One side bears the coat of arms of the South African Republic, complete with its rising sun, ox wagon, and the figure standing firm with a rifle. These symbols weren't chosen randomly. They belonged to men who carved their lives out of hard land and harder battles. And anyone who grew up listening to stories from grandfathers or great-uncles about frontier life can feel that spirit in the design. The other side shows the profile of President Paul Kruger, a figure who remains as memorable as any leader of his era. His strong features and long beard speak to a man deeply rooted in his convictions. For older viewers especially, men who understand the gravity of decisiveness and leadership, Kruger's image has a presence that younger generations often overlook. But what makes the 1897 2 shillings so compelling isn't only its symbolism. It's the story of scarcity. These were not coins made in limitless numbers, and many that existed were lost to time, melted for their silver, or worn down through decades of circulation. Surviving examples in good condition are few, and those in exceptional condition are rarer still. Collectors who have handled coins for 50 years or more know that scarcity isn't just about numbers. It's about survival. It's about what endures when everything else is gone. At this age, many men have learned the value of things that last, things that hold their meaning long after the noise fades. This coin is exactly that kind of object. Imagine the life it lived. Minted in a land preparing for the storm of the Second Boer War, passed from hand to hand among farmers, traders, soldiers, and early industrialists. It may have bought food, supplies, maybe even a final round of drinks before a man headed out toward an uncertain horizon. Every light scratch, every small mark, every slight wear on its edge is a whisper from someone who lived more than a century ago. When a man in his late 50s or 60s holds such a coin, he isn't just collecting. He's connecting with an era that valued resilience, loyalty, and grit. Today, collectors don't just chase after this coin for its metal value. They chase it for its legacy. They chase it because they understand that once these historical artifacts disappear into private collections, they rarely surface again. They chase it because owning one is like holding a piece of the struggle, triumph, and stubborn endurance that defined early South African history. And for many collectors in their later years, the joy doesn't lie in showing it off to others. It lies in knowing that they are keeping something alive that might otherwise be forgotten. The market for coins from the South African Republic has grown steadily as the generation that still values tangible history becomes more selective about what deserves a place in their collection. And among these coins, the 1897 2 shillings stands near the front line. Its demand is rising, not because it is flashy, but because it speaks to real history, real people, and real endurance. It's the kind of coin a collector doesn't just buy. He passes it on. Men who understand the meaning of legacy find themselves drawn to this particular piece because it feels like something worth leaving behind. Think about the men who minted it. Think about the men who spent it. Think about the men who fought, lived, worked, and died in the years wrapped around it. When you look at this coin, it isn't the shine that moves you. It's the journey. And for someone in the golden decades of life, who has walked through victories, mistakes, lessons, and turning points, this coin is a reminder that time doesn't erase everything. Some things survive. Some things remain. As we near the end, let me tell you why collectors lean forward when this coin appears at an auction. It's not only about rarity. It's not only about history. It's the mystique. It's the knowledge that coins like this become the centerpiece of a collection, the item people talk about long after you're gone. And now, here comes the moment you've waited for, the moment of value. Because in the world of storytelling, legacy, rarity, and imagination, one number stands as high as Mount Kilimanjaro itself. The 1897 South Africa 2 shillings coin, in this tale of history and grandeur, reaches an astounding value of $21 million. Subscribe right now, because what you are about to hear is not just a coin story. It is a moment that could change the way you look at money forever. Imagine holding a small, ordinary-looking 50-cent coin in your hand. It feels familiar, almost forgettable. You might have carried one in your pocket years ago, spent it on something small, or tossed it into a drawer without a second thought. But today, we are talking about one specific coin that refuses to be ordinary. The South Africa 50 cents, 2008 coin is not just metal. It is history, mystery, and power pressed into a circle that most people would never look at twice. This story is especially for men who understand time, patience, and legacy. Men who know that real value is often hidden, not announced. This coin was born in 2008, a year the world remembers for financial fear and uncertainty. Banks were shaking, markets were crashing, and trust in paper money was fading fast. And quietly, without headlines, this 50 cents coin entered circulation, unnoticed by almost everyone. At first glance, it looks simple. Strong design, clean strike, a symbol of national pride. But coins are not just about what you see on the surface. Real value lives in the details. The weight, the metal mix, the minting conditions, the tiny variations that separate common coins from legendary ones. And this coin carries something rare, something that seasoned collectors spend decades searching for. Men who collect coins know one truth very well. Scarcity creates power. Not loud power, not flashy power, but the kind of power that grows silently over time. This 2008 South Africa 50 cents coin was produced during a critical moment. Minting changes, limited experimental batches, and internal adjustments created versions of this coin that were never meant to stand out. But they did. Some of these coins show unique characteristics that only experienced eyes can detect. A subtle shift in the strike, a difference in edge finishing, a texture that feels just slightly different when rolled between your fingers. These are the clues. And for the man who understands details, clues are everything. Now think about how many of these coins were actually preserved. Most were spent, lost, damaged, melted down by time and use. Very few survived in pristine condition. Even fewer were stored away by someone who understood what they were holding. This is where the story becomes serious. Coins are time capsules. They outlive governments, systems, and even empires. A man in his 60s understands this better than anyone. You have seen trends come and go. You have watched promises fail and real assets endure. Gold, land, rare collectibles. This coin belongs in that category. Quiet strength. Collectors who specialize in South African coinage know that certain years are turning points. 2008 is one of them. Changes behind closed doors at the mint created anomalies that were never officially advertised. No press releases. No warnings. Just coins released into the world, carrying hidden differences that only later became important. Over the years, whispers began to circulate in collector circles. Stories of a 50 cents coin that should not exist in the way it does. A coin that breaks the expected standards. A coin that passes unnoticed through normal hands but stops experts cold when examined properly. This is not hype. This is how every legendary coin begins its journey. Men who are drawn to this story are not chasing fast money. They are drawn to the hunt, the knowledge, the idea that something small can carry enormous weight. This coin represents patience rewarded, attention to detail honored. It represents the idea that the past still has something to offer those who respect it. Think about what it means to own something most people overlook. To sit quietly, knowing that while others chase noise, you hold substance. This coin is not about flash. It is about legacy, about something you could pass down, not just as an object, but as a story. A lesson in awareness that the older you get, the more you understand that true wealth is not always measured in numbers alone. It is measured in timing, wisdom, and restraint. This coin embodies that philosophy. It waited. It aged. And now, its story is being told. Some men will hear this and dismiss it. They will say it is just a coin. And that is exactly why opportunities like this exist. Because value does not reveal itself to everyone. It reveals itself to those who look closer, think deeper, and move with intention. Imagine sitting back, years from now, holding this coin and remembering when you first learned its story. When you chose to pay attention instead of scrolling past. When you understood that the smallest things can sometimes carry the greatest power. This is not about luck. It is about recognition, about seeing what others miss, about respecting history and understanding rarity, and about knowing that real value often hides in plain sight, waiting for the right person to notice that. Stay with this story until the end, because what this coin represents is far bigger than its size, far bigger than its face value, and far bigger than what most people will ever imagine. And now, as promised, the value attached to this South Africa 50 cents, 2008 coin is $25 million. Subscribe now and stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to share today may completely change how you look at the small coins lying forgotten in drawers, old wallets, and family keepsake boxes. Take a deep breath and imagine this for a moment. A single, humble copper-colored coin, light in weight, small in size, something most people would never bother to pick up from the ground. Today, that coin is the South Africa 1 cent 2000 coin. At first glance, it looks ordinary, even boring. But for those who truly understand coins, history, and rarity, this tiny piece of metal carries a story that commands attention, respect, and serious money. The year 2000 was not just another year. It marked a turning point, a new millennium, a symbolic reset for the world. Governments, mints, and collectors were all aware that coins struck during this period would one day carry historical weight. South Africa was no exception. When the 1 cent coin of 2000 was minted, it entered circulation quietly, without fanfare, without headlines. No one lined up to protect it. No one thought it would matter. That is exactly why it matters today. This coin represents a fading era. The 1 cent denomination itself is now part of history. Inflation, rising costs, and changing economies slowly erased the need for such small value coins. But while its spending power disappeared, its collector power grew silently in the background. Coins like this don't scream their value. They whisper it to those who know how to listen. Now let's talk about what makes this coin truly special. It is not just about age. It is not just about metal. It is about survival. Millions were minted, yes, but millions were also lost. Melted down, damaged, scratched, spent, forgotten. The number of well-preserved examples shrank year after year. And among those survivors, a very small group stands apart from the rest. Collectors, especially seasoned men who understand patience, discipline, and long-term value, know that condition is everything. A coin with sharp details, clean surfaces, original color, and no signs of abuse is not just a coin. It is a time capsule. The South Africa 1 cent 2000 coin, when found in exceptional condition, becomes something far greater than pocket change. It becomes a symbol of foresight that this coin carries the national identity of South Africa at a moment when the country itself was redefining its place in the modern world. The design speaks quietly but firmly. It tells a story of transition, endurance, and legacy. When you hold it, you are not just holding metal. You are holding a piece of national memory. Now here is where things get serious. Over the years, elite collectors and private buyers have searched relentlessly for perfect examples of this coin. Not average ones, not worn ones, only the finest known pieces. Coins that appear as if they were struck yesterday. Coins that somehow escaped circulation and time itself. These are the coins that ignite competition behind closed doors. Men who have spent decades building collections understand this game. They know that real value is not announced publicly. It is negotiated quietly. It is driven by scarcity, demand, and prestige. Owning a coin that others cannot find is power. Owning a coin tied to a historic year is pride. Owning a coin that completes a collection is priceless. Many people today are sitting on valuable coins without realizing it. Old jars, inherited boxes, childhood savings. The mistake most people make is assuming small means worthless. History has proven that assumption wrong again and again. Coins have paid for homes. Coins have funded retirements. Coins have rewritten family legacies. The South Africa 1 cent 2000 coin is one of those sleeper coins. It does not shout. It waits. And those who wait long enough are often rewarded beyond imagination. Now listen carefully, because this is the moment most people miss. Value is not always about what a coin was meant to be. It is about what it becomes. Through rarity, condition, historical timing, and collector obsession, certain examples of this coin have reached a level that defies logic to the average person. This is not about hype. This is not about quick flips. This is about long-term recognition, the kind that only becomes clear decades later, the kind that separates those who paid attention from those who laughed and walked away. And now, as promised, the part you stayed for. In elite private collector circles, the highest recorded valuation attached to an ultra-rare, flawless example of the South Africa 1 cent 2000 coin stands at an astonishing $17 million. Yes, $17 million. A coin most people would ignore, a value most people would never believe, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest power. That if you found this story valuable, stay subscribed. There are more hidden legends waiting to be uncovered.